Yeah, your child's mental health is more important than a damn education. Welcome back to Clueless But Trying. Thank you so much for watching my video yesterday. I have constructed myself a cute little mic holder because I realised yesterday that it wasn't actually picking up my voice particularly well. So I need to hear it here because it's not a particularly professional one, but it does the job. So that's what we're doing. So welcome back to Clueless But Trying. We are here recovering, rebelling, and raising merry hell.
I'm over being scared, let them talk and let them stare. Go tell them that my time is now.
Okay, so today we're going to go over the 5 things I wish I'd known when my child was going through school refusal, or EBSA, which is emotionally based school avoidance. The term school refusal, I'm pretty sure originally was kind of coined by the schools, but it doesn't reflect the reality of what our children are going through. They're not just refusing to go to school. There are reasons behind it. The government doesn't care about your kids. I say this because the education system has now become about statistics, about ticking boxes, about getting GCSEs, about getting the SATs, about getting the most funds. The schools are out there trying to get all the funds they can because the government's not helping them. I ain't blaming the schools. We are at a point in time now where our children and their well-being and their mental health, physical, emotional, is not top of the list anymore, unfortunately. And I do know several teachers who agree with that stance. I'm sure it's not all of them. It never is. But when I was at school and struggling, my mum was never questioned on my attendance. If I got in, it was wonderful. They praised me for getting in, whatever I could do, even if it was because I got in and I did a couple of lessons and I sat in the library for the rest of the day. It was amazing. But that's just not the experience that I've had with my children, unfortunately. We have been gaslit to the moon and back, in fact, probably out of the galaxy, because the government has put too much pressure on schools to just get the attendance marks in. And quite frankly, if children are in school, they like it. Doesn't matter if your kid's not learning anything because they're completely meltdown out of their brain and in a corner rocking. They're just happy because they've got the tick box. When we were looking at secondary schools, I remember talking to a deputy head teacher and I was asking her about the homework, and she literally said to me, the reason they have so much homework come year 9, 10, 11 is because they cannot teach the entire curriculum in 3 years for GCSEs. There's too much of it for teachers to do. That's not right. Schools don't actually know a great deal about neurodiversity or mental health. So it's 2025 and you'd think that there would be learning given to teachers, to SENCO, to everybody about neurodiversity, about the different ways that people operate and need help. But it's just not the way it is, unfortunately, in my experience. So back when my son was struggling at high school, I had a TAC meeting, Team Around the Child. And I actually pulled from my experience from being in psych hospital because I was in like a school setting with it, and suggested to the SENCO and the deputy head and gosh, the myriad of other people that were there sat looking at me around the table that my son would benefit from having a card to say that he could get out of the class for 5 minutes, to maybe just stand in the hallway for 5 minutes and calm down because the overstimulation of particularly secondary school for him was too much. I also suggested that he had a card so that he could go to the toilet during a lesson. And again, it might be that he needed the toilet because it was anxiety based, or it might just be that he wanted 5 minutes. To me, that's a normal, natural thing. But the SENCO hadn't even thought of that. And as far as I'm aware, we're 7 years down the line, and my cards are still in use down there and helping children, hopefully. But they didn't know that. I didn't know to do that. So maybe you need to teach them what to do. Unfortunately, that does appear to be the way, whether it's they haven't got enough training or they haven't got enough time, capacity. Again, this goes back to the government putting crazy rules on schools. So just be aware that you should speak up and say what your children need. I think something that's got lost along the way is that children can have autonomy. They can have autonomy that is appropriate to their age. Particularly when we get to secondary school, they are young adults. We're creating adults of the future. And if an adult needs to take 5 minutes to breathe at job, then they're not usually questioned a billion times. I mean, quite often, when you work and you go, I'm going to the toilet. You're not. You're sat in there for 5 minutes because you just need your brain to get back together again. So teach the school, teach them what your kid needs. My child's mental health is more important than education. End of period, stop. Yeah? That should be where it stops. But I was definitely gaslit. I keep saying gaslit, but I feel like I was. They made me feel like I was completely wrong in how I felt about my son and my daughter. They made me question my very motives for why I was trying to have them off school. And at the time, my own depression was really, really bad. And actually, I could have done with some time to myself. I could have done with a couple of hours here or a day to, go and do something that was for me. But I didn't have that, because when you are parent to a child who's school refusing, you don't know what you're doing from 1 hour to the next, let alone day to day. It's not something people choose to do. So when it comes to your child's mental health, please bear in mind that you know best. I wish I'd listened to my intuition sooner. I really, really do. It was screaming at me for years that what I was putting my son through, what the school was putting my son through, was wrong. End of. If I managed to get him in to do a 2-hour session, did he really learn anything? Did he really actually learn science or English or maths, or was he sat there completely overwhelmed? And what he actually learned was his feelings aren't valid. He's a burden on everybody because, he's so hard to get in and all these sorts of things. And he didn't learn to trust himself. And I've actually had to spend the last several years building his own trust in himself back up, and with myself as well, worked on myself with that. So yeah, your child's mental health is more important than a damn education. Schools will lie to you about what you can and can't get for your kids because they don't need the paperwork. That's what it is. So I didn't actually learn about an EHCP until the year that my son went to an alternative provision. And I had never been told that I could get one, and I certainly didn't know that you didn't need a diagnosis to get one. So if you want to go ahead and get an EHCP, an educational healthcare plan, put in place for your child, you can start the process through your local authority. They probably will fight you, but you can do it because they should be putting in reasonable adjustments to help your child get into school. If they want your child in school, you'd think logically that they would help with that. So often, I feel like schools, there's a lot of things in life in general, but they rely on you not knowing the legalities of things to get away from it. And listen, I'm sorry that teachers are overburdened with all this. And quite frankly, I think we should all be, rallying together against the government, the parents and the teachers. But it's not my fault as a parent that you're overrun with work at school. I just need my child supported, and that's your job as a teacher, as a deputy head, as Senko, whatever. Please, can you meet me halfway? Let's help get our kid into school. The system will only listen to you when you force it to. Because I grew up with all of my own OCD and everything, I actually went to CAMS, the Children and Adolescents Mental Health Services. I actually went through that when I was a child myself. And so my son actually went to the exact same place as I did. So I forced through him getting seen for anxiety, because they won't do it for, if he's autistic or whatever. I forced it through on anxiety, and I just kept ringing up. I was very polite. I got the GP on the case. Everybody. The school didn't want to do anything. So I forced it through. We got him in, and whilst they did help him with anxiety meds, just to help try and find some sort of baseline for him, what they did massively for me was, because I knew the system, I basically begged and pleaded for one of them to come to a TAC meeting, Team Around the Child meeting, so that I would be backed up in what I was saying. And thankfully, I can't remember her name now, but I'm pretty sure she was a psychologist that actually came, because she was somebody I knew from way back when I was there. And she came with me, and she sat in that meeting with me and said, listen, this mum, Liz, not just mum, Liz, knows what she's talking about. She knows her child, what she's suggesting to be put in place, which was, integrating, little bits into the day, cards, working on the small timetable, even not a part-time table, just one day on, one day off. She was like, this woman knows what she's talking about, and you should be putting it in place if you want him in school. And that makes me feel quite emotional now, because it was like, boom. Because I just spent the last 3 or 4 years with them telling me that I had no clue what I was on about. And I had CAMS come in and blow it out of the water in one half-an-hour meeting. And after that meeting, my son actually got offered alternative provision, which I'd been asking for 2 years. All this to say, it's a bloody big fight out there. And it nearly destroyed me, nearly destroyed our family. And if I can leave you with one thing to go forward with, it's trust yourself. You know your kids. You literally brought them into the world. You know what they're like. You know how they are when they're coming home and they're in a meltdown mode. You know when they're upset, when you're trying to get them into school. It shouldn't be that hard. That's not normal. When I was struggling and I didn't want to go to school, it was hard to get into school, but it was hard because of my OCD, not because I was terrified of what the teachers were going to say, or, part of the school wasn't going to understand or challenge me on everything I was doing like they did to my kids. It's a systematic failure. It's not you. Please keep fighting the good fight for your kids. Some of you may know that I actually home educate now, because I'd had enough, and because we couldn't, as a family, survive any more school. So we home educate now. So I will be doing a video on my reasons for being pushed into that, but why that was the most freeing decision we could absolutely make. So keep fighting, and you deserve to know that you are bloody brilliant for doing what you do. Bye. Time's up.